Tombow USA. And I'm really excited to introduce our brand ambassador, Amy Lotta. She'll be teaching you how to hand letter today. And it's actually National Handwriting Day. So it's perfect timing to be doing this class and learning how to letter. If you have any questions during the class, feel free to drop them in the chat bar and I will do my best to answer all of them. And without further ado, Amy, I'm going to hand it off to you to get our class started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle. And huge thanks to Michaels and to Tombow for having me today to celebrate National Handwriting Day. I'm so excited about this because even though I do all kinds of craft projects and all different types of creative things, hand lettering is my number one passion. So much so that I've actually written 5 books about it. And I think that there's something so special about putting pen to paper and using our handwriting. So much in our world is digital right now. It's all about graphic design and things that we can do on the computer and on our phones. And I think I, for one, don't want to lose the art of being able to turn our written words into something beautiful with our own hands. So I think that this is the perfect celebration for National Handwriting Day, and I am thrilled that you're joining me. So when we talk about hand lettering, it actually encompasses a lot of things because there's so many different fonts that we can write in, and there's also embellishments, things that we can put in and on and around our words to make them beautiful as well. So today we're going to be covering 3 basic things. When we think about those hand lettering fonts, there's usually one that comes to mind, and that is what you're seeing here, the way that I've written the words hand lettering on the page. And this is something called brush script. And what sets brush script apart from other styles of fonts is if you look at each individual letter, every letter itself is made up of a combination between thin lines and thick lines. And that's what gives brush script its really characteristic look. That's what we love to see on those signs that we're buying in Michaels and other places to decorate our homes. It's what we're seeing on advertisements. We see it done digitally, and we want to learn how to do it by hand. There's 2 ways that we can get that brush script look, and we're going to look at those 2 today. One is called Faux Calligraphy, which is very simple and you can do with almost any type of marker or pen that you have. And the other is actual brush script with a brush pen, like the Tombow dual brush pens that we're going to be using. We're also going to take a quick look at how to elevate your print, and we're going to learn a few basic embellishments so that we can decorate those artist loft journals that I asked you to have on hand. If you don't have a journal, you can just do it on a piece of paper or on a canvas, anything that you like. But I'm going to be showing you how to create just a pretty little front for a journal or a sketchbook that you would like to use. So that's kind of where we're headed with our class today. As Michelle mentioned, if you have any questions at any time, please toss them in the chat and she will make sure that I can hear them. If you can't hear, if you can't see, if I'm going too fast or too slow, or if you just absolutely love what's going on and you need me to know, please tell me in the chat. I can do this free and talk to you everywhere in the US and Mexico and all those wonderful places that you were telling me that you're watching from. But the hardest part for me is that I can't see you. I can't talk to you and I can't physically see what you're doing on your paper. So that's where the chat comes in. Please utilize it. Michelle's going to be letting me know if there's questions and comments and just keeping an eye to make sure that things are flowing smoothly. But I would love for this to be as interactive as possible so that it's the best experience for all of us. So at this point, it would be a great time to get your supplies out if you haven't already. We should have the Tombow either beginning or advanced lettering kit. Pieces of that we're going to be specifically using today are the Tombow dual brush pen, which looks like this, and you probably have this color and a black. And you're also going to need your Tombow Fudenosuke, which is my favorite lettering marker, this little guy. And we're going to be using the Tombow Mono Twin when we get to decorating the actual journal. So those are the 4 markers that I'm going to want you to pull out. And there were also some handouts. There was a link provided when Michael sent you the link to join the class. If you didn't have those, Michelle is putting in the comments where you can download them from Google Drive right now and print them out. But we're going to be using these handouts to guide the class as well. So right now, I would love for you to take out some scrap paper. You can even use inside your journal if you'd like to start working in your sketchbook. And this first handout, we're going to start with the one that says joy, joy, joy across the top, because this is going to be our introduction to faux calligraphy. Faux calligraphy is the first method that we're going to learn to get the brush script look, that combination of thick lines and thin lines. And to do this, we're going to be using our dual brush pen, but we're going to be using the end that is not the brush tip. So Tombow dual brush pens come in 108 different colors. One side is a brush tip that we're going to use later, which is under the colored cap. The other end is a little fine tip bullet marker. And that's what we're going to be using right now for our faux calligraphy. So in order to do our faux calligraphy, we're going to choose a word, and I've chosen the word joy for two reasons, really. One, because it's short and sweet, just 3 letters to work with, and the other because it's actually my 2021 word for the year. I figure after 2020, we all need a little joy in our lives. So that's my word of the year that I'm focusing on. So what we're going to do, our first step to do faux calligraphy, is that we're just going to write in script handwriting, J-O-Y, on your scrap paper or in your journal. I see a question about tutorials for left-handers. I, obviously not being a lefty, don't have a lot of great tips for you personally, but I do know that Dawn Nicole Designs, she has a website and is a lettering artist who also works with Tombow, and she has some great tutorials and tips on her website. That's Dawn Nicole Designs. But so we're writing our word joy, and once we have it, now what we have to do is figure out how we're going to get that combination of thick lines and thin lines. So the trick to this, and you may want to make a note of this in your sketchbook or on your scrap paper, is that we're going to pay attention to what type of strokes are in our word. So what I mean by that is anytime that you're writing and your pen is moving on the paper, it's moving in one of 3 basic directions. It's either moving down toward you, it's moving up away from you, or it's moving in a horizontal direction, like crossing a T, etc. So when we're moving down, we call this a downstroke. When we're moving our pen up, who can guess what we're going to call it? It's an upstroke. And then we also have a horizontal stroke. So the rule for brush script, whether you're doing faux calligraphy or the actual technique, is that downstrokes are thick. All other kinds of strokes are thin. So if you can remember this one key point, you're going to be in great shape for whichever way you want to do your brush script. Downstrokes are thick, all other strokes are thin. So we're going to go back to our word joy. And what we have to do is locate our downstrokes so that we can make them thicker than the others. So we're going to start with our J. And the first line we made was going in an upward direction. Then the stem of the J is coming down toward us. So we're going to draw a second line here. And then we're going to do the same thing for our O. Where we switch directions, we're going to leave it alone because we've gone back into an upstroke. On the O, the left-hand side, our pen is moving down, and then we're going back up again. If you have a loop on your O, you're coming down. Some people make their O like this. If that's you, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. And then we're going to come over here to the Y. We're going to do a double line on that left side, and then another double line on the right side. So you should have something that looks similar to the center joy on your worksheet. So all we've done is locate the downstrokes and draw a second line. Now, one question that we often get at this point is, should I put my double line on the outside or the inside of where I wrote my letters? And the answer is, Yes, it really doesn't matter. There's no hard and fast rule. So if I had a ton of space in between my J and my O, I would probably put both lines on the outsides. If I had my J and O very close to each other, I would probably do it the opposite. So you're looking at your word and trying to balance it out artistically. Look at, where do I have space? Where would it make sense for me to do this double line? Then once you've done that, the last step is just to go back and we're going to color in between our lines. And that's what you'll see in the third joy on your handout. And what this does, and you can actually use either tip of the Tombow dual brush pen to do this, the coloring in. So what happens is you have the look of some of your lines being thicker than others. And I also like to go back and do the dot above my J just to make it match the rest of the word. So we've gone back and artificially thickened some of our lines. So now it looks like we have that brush script technique, even though we didn't actually use a brush pen. Pretty sneaky. So this again, if you're wanting to write it down somewhere, this is called Faux Calligraphy. And it's basically a fake it till you make it method to get our brush script. We write our word, we double line where we have downstrokes, and we color it in. This can be done with any kind of bullet tip markers. So any of Tombow's bullet tips, they're monoline drawing pens, the mono twin permanent marker, any of those. You can do faux calligraphy with that. You can even do it with Tombow drawing pencils. So ballpoint pens, any of that kind of thing. You can do faux calligraphy with just about any writing utensil you have, which is awesome. So what we want to do now that you've done your first joy is we're going to do it a second time. I like to say that practice makes progress. Never perfect. None of us are ever going to reach perfection, but we can certainly make progress. So we're going to go back and we're going to do a second joy now that you know what you're doing. And if yours felt a little too big the first time, you can make it a little smaller. If it felt too squished, you can leave a little extra space. But the second time, I bet you that most of you are going to like what you do better than you liked your first one. So just get it kind of in your muscle memory, what you're doing there with your joy. And once you've done that, I would love to see a thumbs up or a happy face or a heart in the chat. If you're feeling stuck and confused, you could put a question mark or a little help me. But I would love to see kind of how we're doing. I'm seeing smileys and hearts. Good. That is what I want to see. Excellent. All right, I'm not seeing any help me flags. So that tells me that we can go ahead and continue. So what I would like to challenge you is to write a new word. We've gone through joy. So what I want you to do is choose another word that you would like to try in faux calligraphy. So I'm going to do my first name. You can do your first name or mine. You can do your dog's name, your kids' names. You could do love. You could do anything you like, your word of the year. And what you're going to do is write it in script. We're going to do exactly what we did the last time, which is to go back and find the downstrokes. We're going to do a double line every time we find one. And then we're going to go back and color them in. And you'll see once again with your new word, we're going to get that pretty brush script effect without a brush pen, which is awesome. And no one will ever know that you did it using faux calligraphy. So the trickiest part as you're moving on to new words, and what I would encourage you to do is continue choosing some other words, try other names, try anything that you might like to write on your journal later. You can always do a monogram, or you can do something like one of my sample journals in the image was practice makes progress. But try to write something that you might want to put on your journal. And as you're doing it, I want you to refer to this worksheet that we have, our Joy, because the hardest part about this when you're first learning is figuring out where the downstrokes are. Eventually, with practice, you'll know. You'll remember where they go, and you'll be paying attention to the way that your hand is moving. Now, you can figure it out. You can sit there and say, oh, my pen was moving down here. Okay, then it was up. then it was down. And I encourage you sometimes to try to do that, but that can be time consuming. And we want to be able to do this relatively quickly. So I've given you a reference here on this work page. This is the full lowercase and capital script, as well as an uppercase print. And this way you can look at my sample letters and see where the downstrokes, where the thick parts are. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to form your letters exactly the same way that I do. I know, for example, a lot of folks do their lowercase s differently. I know a lot of people, when you're writing in cursive, will do an S that looks like this. And in that case, your downstroke is going to be, oh, sorry, that's a little messy. Your downstroke is going to be over here on the right side. And so you can certainly do that. I tend to do an S that looks a little more like a print one. It's not a right or wrong. Remember, this is National Handwriting Day. We're celebrating your handwriting. So however you happen to write that letter is a-okay. You're just going to look for where those downstrokes are. The key is just figuring out where the thick places go and leaving the others thin. And this can be a guide for you, even if you form some of your letters a little bit differently for where those strokes are. Now, at this point, as you're practicing your words and you're practicing your letters and your monograms that you might want to use on your journal, this is where I often get folks who say, oh, can I see you write the letter, whatever. So I did see a couple of those fly by in the chat, but it's hard for me to see them all. So I'm going to ask Michelle, do we have any particular letters that folks had questions about?
I did see someone say that I was a little bit challenging for them. M and lowercase e. Those are the ones I've seen
Okay.
so far.
Okay. It would help if you specify in the chat if we're talking about capital or lowercase. For the I, I'm going to assume that you're having trouble with the capital one. You can do it one of two ways. You can do it kind of in the more traditional cursive like this, and the downstroke will be on the right side. Or a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just do kind of a fancy version of a print one, and then the center is going to be your downstroke. For an M, the capital and the lowercase are virtually the same. I just go down, I make my two bumps. This downstroke is one. Here's your second one on the right. And here's this one on the right of the second hump. And what was the other one, Michelle?
Oh my goodness, so many have come in since I've last
Oh.
said it, but
Oh no.
so I am seeing X, S. I'm seeing a lot of S's, and I think you maybe should do
Okay.
both upper and lowercase. I mean, they're kind of
Got it.
similar, but
Okay. So when I do an S, typically for me personally, whether it's upper or lower, I do this, just kind of my curly snake. And the center part is where your pen was moving down. So you're just going to make that part thicker, like so. If you want to do a more traditional S, you can certainly do so, but that same spot is going to be your downstroke because that's the only part where your pen was moving down. The lowercase s, again, I'm going to do something like this or something like this, and that right-hand side is the downstroke. I heard an X. X is kind of a little beast because it's got, depending on how you write it, some people think it has two downstrokes. The way I write it, I have a downstroke here, and then I cross it with an upstroke because it makes my head feel better than trying to think I would downstroke everything, because then it would just look bold, and that's not what we want. So that is how I would do an X. What else do we have, Michelle?
oops, I was muted. Someone actually asked an interesting question on
Yes.
tips on how to fix your mistake if you accidentally thicken an upward stroke. Is that something you can give a tip on?
So I recommend the Tombow sand eraser.
Yeah.
Because that can erase some marker and colored pencil and things like that. Honestly, there's not an awesome way to fix it. if you can, and you're doing a permanent project and you're on your surface and there's nothing else to do, just kind of work around it and figure nobody will notice. Otherwise, honestly, I'd start over.
Okay. And then I did see a few people ask if you can actually letter your name again, Amy.
My name, sure. So my downstrokes, I've got the left side of the A and the stem, and then we just did the M, so we know it's going to be on the right side of each of the bumps. And then whoops, I went a little too far down there. And then the Y, we're going to have the left side and the stem. And that actually, what I did there makes me remember something I wanted to say to you, which is when you're coming around a curve, like at the bottom of this M, it's better to stop sooner than later. Because what happens is if you don't and you try to keep coming around, you're going to end up kind of doing one of these and then it gets all bolded, which is not the look we want. So when you're coming to the bottom, like here on the S, here on the I, you want to try to stop as soon as your pen would be changing direction. So like if I were writing an O, my pen starts to go upward right about here. So that's where I want to stop the double line thickness, because anything else and you're going to be traveling around into upstroke territory, if that makes sense. Okay, what else do we have?
If you have some time, I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure every letter of the alphabet has been mentioned. So I'm trying to see ones that have been requested more than once. I think I saw several Fs. No, they didn't specify upper or lowercase. So maybe if you can do both. And I'm seeing
Okay.
several Rs as well.
Okay, so I'm going to make myself a note. Okay, so F, couple different ways. This is one. Downstroke would be this guy here and this guy here. And this is not my neatest work, I apologize. The lowercase f, it's going to be this kind of his spine is what I think of it as. And then if you have a loop, this little piece of the loop, but then everything else is an up. For another version, you can do kind of like what I did with the I, where it's just sort of a fancier version of a print F. I just kind of put a little curl to my, whatever you call those things that come up of it. For R, I would do something like this for a capital. The stem is going to be a downstroke. This side is going to be a downstroke. And then this piece right here is a downstroke. For the lowercase r, which is a favorite of mine, if you have a big loop, you're going to do that. And the right side, some people don't put loops on their R. That makes me personally sad, but this is what it would look like. All right. Any other repeat letters?
Yeah.
But basically, oh, yeah.
Yes, there's one more repeat letter I've been seeing, and that is K. Both.
Oh, K is yucky. I'm sorry, people with Ks, because it's the hardest one. So what I try to do is I try to throw in loops, because the tricky thing about our friend K is that both this part and this part are downstrokes. So it can be tricky because we don't want it to look bold, which is why I put a loop in there so that we have something that looks a little different. For the lowercase k, I try to do, again, a little loop there like so. But yeah, uppercase K has to be my least favorite letter. So I'm sorry, you can think about a name change or, but that is kind of what we do. I would once again recommend that you go not very far with your downstroke. Stop right at the bottom so that it doesn't look too bolded like that. All right. Anything else?
I think that should be it, just because I don't know if we can get to all the letters in one
Yeah.
class. But someone, if
Right.
you can quickly go over, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this before, but someone was actually asking if you have any tips for someone that with shaky hands.
I do. That's a great question. One thing that helps is to do it more quickly, which is kind of the opposite of what our intuition is. Like we think, oh, if I really take my time, I can write the perfect letter. But what happens is that gives your hand more time to shake. Whereas I was done a whole lot faster there. So my hand didn't have time to wiggle. So I recommend going faster. The other thing I recommend is going smaller, because once again, if I'm trying to make a really big letter, see, I have lots of time here to goof it up. But if I'm making a little a, less time for shakes. So my tips are smaller and faster. That's an excellent question. So this is the basics of faux calligraphy. And we could sit here and do every single letter all day long, which would be fun, but wouldn't get you to where you need to be. So this is the reference. And the other thing that I will say is that I have practice pages on my website, amylattacreations.com. And you can go there if you head over to, I think it's the projects tab. It'll come down and it'll say hand lettering tutorials, which you can certainly click on, and hand lettering free practice pages. So click on free practice pages, and I literally have pages for every single letter of the alphabet. I am providing you with this one today already, but you can get a page that's nothing but A's, nothing but B's. So pick your letter that's stressing you out, or all 26 of them, and you can have individual practice for each of those letters from that. But we're going to go ahead and move on to look at brush script a little bit. So brush script, we're going to be forming our letters the same way, but we're going to be using a different technique to make those thick lines. So before, to get the contrast between thick and thin, we would write everything with our bullet tip, we would draw a second line, and we would color it in. But this time we're going to let the brush pen do the work for us. So we're using the same pen, the Tombow dual brush pen. Any color you have is fine. And we're going to use the brush side this time. Now, the reason this is called a brush pen is because the tip is designed to mimic the action of a paintbrush. And if you think about when you're painting, what happens when you press down on the tip of a paintbrush? It moves, right? It flexes, it spreads out. Versus if you don't apply a lot of pressure, it doesn't. So the brush tip is designed to do basically the same thing. So what happens is we control how thick or thin our line is based on how much pressure we do or do not apply to the tip of the marker. So I want you to take your brush pen and I want you to make some downstrokes. All we're doing is pulling the pen down on the paper toward ourselves. And what you'll see is that the pen should flex and give us a beautiful series of really dark, thick lines. If your lines do not look as thick as mine, you're not pressing hard enough. I know that it's intimidating because you have this beautiful, fresh new marker and you don't want to break it. And we're afraid to push. You know, we want to take good care of our supplies, which is a great thing. But that's what this pen is literally made to do. You're not going to break it. You're not going to fray it or hurt it. Go ahead and press, and you're going to get these nice, thick, dark lines. After you've done a series of those, we're going to switch and we're going to do some upstrokes. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to let our pen glide on the paper, but we're not going to apply a lot of pressure. In fact, we're going to apply as little pressure as we can. And I want you to note the difference between the thickness of the lines. See, we've got nice, dark, thick downstrokes and much lighter, thinner upstrokes. So far, so good. So what we want to do now is alternate them. We're going to go down and then up and down and up. And a lot of times I get asked about the angle of my pen. And honestly, you can change the angle, but I typically stay at about a 45-degree angle for my down and my upstrokes. Some artists will say they move more to 90 degrees for upstrokes, but I personally have never done that. If it's easier for you, you can do that, but I think it's harder to actually change your grip while you're writing. I just control how much pressure I'm applying as I'm going down and up. So we've got a series of downstrokes and upstrokes. And this is the kind of thing that as you're learning this technique, you want to fill pages of that sketchbook with. These basic drills are going to be the building blocks of letters. So even though right now it feels like I'm not lettering, I'm just drawing straight lines, eventually, I promise you're going to put these shapes together to get letters and then words. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect our downstroke and our upstroke. So we're going to make a downstroke, but instead of letting go, we're just going to release our pressure. And that's going to give us this nice U shape, which is actually called an underturn. There's a nice fancy word for you, an underturn. So we have a downstroke that goes into an upstroke. And remember, we want to release pressure right when we get to the bottom instead of holding on too long and then we get something kind of wacky. So we don't like that guy. This is also a point in the class where I often get asked about paper. So let's talk about our practice paper for a minute. If you're using a sketchbook, I recommend a medium weight sketch paper that is very, very smooth. I'm the weirdo who doesn't like to buy my sketchbooks on Amazon. I have to go to the store and touch the paper. I'm the one that's going to be going down that aisle feeling the paper, because the smoother, the better. The better it's going to work for you because your pen isn't going to snag on anything rough, and the better it is for your marker tip. The paper that I'm using right here is actually laser printer paper, because this is really, really good to your marker tips as well. Regular copy paper, you can practice on it, but eventually it's harder on your marker tips and they'll start to fray before their time. So smoother is better. All right, so we did our underturns. Now we're going to try something called an overturn, which you may have guessed is the opposite. So we're going to do an upstroke into a downstroke. So instead of doing this, we're just going to not pick up our pen. And then we get these little mountains called overturns. And you can already see, like I promised, you've got building blocks of letters, because if you put a downstroke with 2 overturns, look what happens. If you put a downstroke with 1 overturn, it's an N. If you do an underturn and a downstroke, a U. 2 of them gives you a W. So I promise the more you do these drills, the more you're going to find, hey, if I put these together, I can actually write letters and words. There's a few other shapes to try. One is an oval, which you can do by pushing and then releasing. It's kind of like an underturn, but it's just a little more rounded. We also have a loop, which is an upstroke that crosses over itself into a downstroke. So that's kind of different and fun. This is something that you'll use for something like an H. You'll have a loop with an overturn, or something like a B. So you've got a loop with an oval. And I see questions about what pen I'm using. This is the Tombow dual brush pen. And then the final drill that I like to do is this descender loop that would make, as you can see, a J. You could do an oval with one of these, gives you a G. So we're just going down and then back up. So by no means will yours look perfect today. This probably feels very foreign, and that's okay. The idea today is to give you an introduction to the 2 different ways to get brush script style. We had the faux calligraphy, and then we have actual brush technique done with a brush pen. Today, you're not going to master it. It's something that takes time and practice and repetition. And like anything else that you're going to do with your body, this gets in your muscle memory, believe it or not. Your hand will start to remember, oh, this is where I push. Hey, this is where I release. And it'll be just like riding a bike and driving a car and doing all those things, where your hand will start to do it without you having to think so hard about it, which is really exciting when it happens. So the more that you do these exact drills, which again, I have these on my website, you can print out pages. The more you fill pages in your pretty little sketchbook with this, you're going to find that you're getting the hang of it and you can put the letters together. So this is brush style script. It can also be done. I told you that there was another pen that we were going to use from your set for this, the Tombow Fudenosuke, which is the one that has all the Japanese writing on it here. And this is also a brush tip, but it's much smaller. So I love lettering with this when I'm doing a big surface, a sign or something like that. and when I'm practicing and learning and teaching. This is my go-to brush pen. If you have any of my books, most of the brush work in there was done with this pen because it's smaller, and therefore I personally find it easier to control. So I would encourage you to take out your Fudenosuke and just give it a little try. You can just push and release, do a couple of those little underturns and overturns just to get a feel for what this tip is like. And as you react to that, I would love to see your little happy faces and hearts if you love this pen as much as I do, because I think you're going to. But what I find is a lot of people, oh, I just saw a question about soft or hard. The one I'm using right now, this is the hard. I'm not sure, Michelle, you can speak to which one comes in the kits. I don't remember offhand. I use both. I love them both. And I honestly don't see that much difference between them. Yes, there's a little bit of difference in feel and control, but I like them both. So Michelle, if you want to speak to which one they have.
So we have our advanced and beginner lettering set. In our advanced, you will get both, but we really recommend the hard tip for beginners. It mimics your natural handwriting better, and we recommend that for starters. Both are great, but definitely the hard tip for beginners, and you'll be able to tell the difference because you can kind of see at the angle Amy's holding hers right now. The hard tip has like green and purple, I believe, if you turn it around. Yeah, green and purple. And on the soft tip, you'll see pink on it. So we definitely recommend the hard for beginners.
They also come in colors.
Yes, colors and neon as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the soft, so you can
Yeah,
see
it's
the
pink and
difference.
gold.
Yeah. But this is an awesome, awesome pen. I see lots of people who are loving it, which is good because literally anytime that someone asks me what pen to start with, this is my first answer. These two pens are my go-to. And any of you who follow on the website and Instagram and who have asked me that question before, you know that's absolutely 100% true. It's not because Tombow's sponsoring this class. It's because these are what I always, always use and what I tell people to buy and get. Because they're frankly the best. Woo, sorry. They're the best on the market. And they hold up, they work well, they're easy to use, really, really beginner friendly and pro friendly. So I hope that you love this pen as much as I do. It's my go-to. And I mentioned this worksheet that I had for you that has the whole alphabet on it for you to practice. And that is designed to go with a pen the size of the Fudenosuke. So my recommendation for you to practice brush script would be to take this and trace over those gray letters using the Fudenosuke later after this class is over, because we do have a few other things that I want to cover. But use this in your own time to practice. And if you're someone who doesn't enjoy doing the brush technique, I know sometimes when I teach workshops in person, I get people who are like, I can't do this, I hate it. You can do it, but if you hate it and it makes you want to throw things across the room, just do faux calligraphy. It's okay. Both things will give you the brush script effect, and they both look awesome and beautiful. So if you want to use a bullet tip marker on this and do faux calligraphy instead, go for it. I'll never know. No one will ever know. And you can still practice your skills that way. So it's designed to go with the Fude, but honestly, use it with whatever you want for whatever you want for your own practice of hand lettering. So do we have questions at this point?
I'm looking through. Let's see. Someone said they really love your nails, by the way.
Oh, why? Thank you.
Let's see. I'm trying to see what ones are coming in that you might be able to go over.
Okay.
Let's see. Right now, I'm not seeing any ones that I can't just answer in the chat.
Okay.
A lot of them are like
Perfect.
paper and what pen are you using,
Okay.
what
Got
you've
it.
gone over. So if you want to keep continuing, that would be great.
Will do. So what I want to talk about right now, we're going to go pretty quick, but this is just a little way to elevate your printing, because what you'll find is a lot of times when you're hand lettering, you're going to want to do a combination of fonts. So for example, on this journal that I lettered, you can see I used my script here, but for the word makes, I decided to print instead. Same thing if you look at the cover of my latest book. Little plug, love the book. You've got brush script, and then you've got print. So a lot of times, if you're lettering something that's more than a monogram or just a few words, you're going to want to combine a few different fonts. So there's a way to take your printing and just elevate it a little to make it look more artistic to go with your brush script. So when you're in school and you're learning how to print, you get things that look like this, right? Your paper with the dashed lines. And these things all have names. You don't have to remember them, but the cap height is how tall your capital letters are. The baseline is where your letters sit. And the X height is the center line. So that's where we cross our A and where the bumps of our B go. And when we write an E, it goes like this, and so on for letters that have things happening in the middle. But what happens is we can say, hey, I know the rules, but guess what? I'm going to break them like an artist. Isn't that fun? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the X height and we're going to raise it. So all we're going to do is we're going to write our letters the same way, but we're going to move that X height. So now suddenly when I'm crossing my A and my E and my F and my H, it's happening up here instead of in the center. So instead of, if I'm writing the word happy, instead of something that looks normal, we're going to have something that looks artistic. And if any of you guys are home goods shoppers and Rae Dunn collectors, you'll recognize this kind of style. This is how Rae Dunn built an empire. She makes the coffee mugs. They're just those plain white mugs. And they'll say something like Mr. or Mrs., right? And it's using an X height that's just been raised up. And by the same token, we can lower our X height for a completely different effect. So we can cross our letters all the way down here. And it just gives us, I feel like this one makes a really whimsical kind of look that I like to use. So if you're doing happy birthday or something like that, look how different that looks and how purposefully artistic as opposed to just printing. So that is just a really quick little overview of how you can take your regular capital print handwriting. It doesn't really work with lowercase letters because the X height doesn't really factor into most lowercase letters. But when I do my lettering, you'll notice that I tend to do lowercase script and capital print. And that's sort of my go-to for the way that I personally write. That doesn't mean you have to, doesn't mean you can't capitalize in your brush script if you'd like to, or lowercase in your print. But this is just personally something that I found that works for me because I have the contrast of print and script, and I also have the contrast of capital versus lowercase. And so that's just a suggestion that I have for you. I see a question there. Does Michael sell Amy's book? Sad, sad, sad panda. No, they do not sell my book, but I wish that they did. And I'm trying to get them to, and my publisher is reaching out. So Michael's, if you're listening, see the people have spoken and they want the book. So please, can you carry it? Thank you. So this is a quick overview of elevating your print. We also have faux calligraphy and we have brush script. So that's a lot, right? Is everybody hanging with me okay? If you're ready to look at a few basic embellishments, I would love to see a thumbs up, a smiley, a heart, something that shows me that you are ready to go with me. Good, I'm seeing some things. Excellent, lots of smiley faces. I'm smiling right back at you. I'm so glad you're here. Good, 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 good. Okay, very good. All right, I think they need to make an emoji of Bernie in the chair. That's just my side note. But anyway, so we are going to talk about some basic, simple embellishments now. And these are just some things that you can use in, on, and around your words to decorate them. So for example, you'll see I have like this flowering vine that's coming up the side of mine to the right of where the bookmark goes. And then here I've just done some little vines so you can see how we toss those into our designs and use them. So the first one, this is going to be the third handout that you printed out. And the first one is just a really basic arrow. And at this point, I always get people who are like, whoa, I can maybe letter, I can't draw. I promise you can. Just like the lettering, we talked about how we're thinking of it not so much as a letter, but a combination of shapes, right? A downstroke, an underturn, or an overturn. Same thing here. We're breaking this down into shapes that I promise you anyone can draw. So to make an arrow, we're just going to draw a line. We can all do that. Oh, what pen now? This is a Tombow dual brush pen, the bullet tip end. So this is a regular bullet tip marker, not a brush pen. You can't see what I'm doing. Okay. Can you see it now? Horizontal line. Not on the journal yet. Nope, that was just an example. So we're doing this on our scrap paper. We're learning to draw the arrow. Very good. Okay. So we have a horizontal line. And now we're just going to put a triangle on the end and color him in. This, the handout link is in the comments. We're going to use the mono twin pen on the journal because it's permanent. Right now we're working with a water-based marker, so we can't use that on the journal. Now we're going to do a V on the end and another V a little further up. It's up to you how much space you want in between those. The farther apart you place them, the longer the tail of your arrow will be. So it's up to you what kind of tail you want. Then we're just going to connect these. And then if you want, you can add some more little V's to make the effect of feathers, or you could color it in. You could also color it in with a different color. So lots of different options, ways that you can personalize this. You can put little dots. You can put a little line, lots of things here. So right now we're using the Tombow dual brush pen, the bullet tip end, not the brush. So the one that's not under the colorful cap. And later we're going to switch to the mono twin for the journal. For the arrow variations, we can do any kind. Oh, a twin tone also works. Yes, if you have a Tombow twin tone, you can also use that for this. It will not work on the journal because it's not permanent, but it will work in the journal and for your practice right here. So we can do wavy lines for our arrows. We can also do big curling lines, and there's lots of places that you can use these embellishments. So for example, there's a lot of tribal boho kind of style stuff out there right now. So anything that goes with that style with your home decor, you can use it in. It also works really well for quotes like adventure awaits, find your tribe, all those kinds of things, be wild. If you are into Bible journaling, I have a book, my fourth one, Hand Lettering for Faith, is all about Bible journaling. And you can do like your journaling in the margins, and then you can put an arrow to where that verse is. Or if you're doing it in, let's say you're taking a college class and you want to do some things in the margins, put your arrow to show what you're talking about there. So lots of places that you can use arrows. Now we're going to talk about those leafy vines. And that is what we have on the examples here. So to do this, the first way we're going to start is just by making a little arched line. And we're going to put a little teardrop on the end. And then we're going to go down, and I think of them as sort of heart shapes for these leaves. And that is just a really basic curving vine, and nature goes with everything. So these can embellish just about any kind of quote you can think of. To make this look a little different, you can increase the size as you go down, because some plants do that. Think about like a fern. Oh, sorry, that's kind of messy. But you can also add veins to your leaves. You can color your leaves, of course. And you can see it's the same basic technique, but it looks totally different. Same thing if you put points on the end of your leaves, that's going to give them a different effect. And you can alternate your leaves, so they can be right next to each other, or you can have them take turns which side of the stem they're on. Like the arrow, and like you see on the journal, you can do a waving line instead of an arch. and put any kind of leaves you want going down there. You can put little dots in between. And one of my personal favorite things to do is turn it into a wreath. So all I do for that is I just draw kind of a messy circle, and then I start putting my leaves around it. And that is how we did, those of you who took my class back in November, that's how we did this canvas, where I just did the messy circles and then I put leaves, and we stuck some pine and holly in because it was the holidays, but you could do any kind of wreath there. Same thing here. You can see on this canvas. So this is a very simple, basic few steps to do the laurels or vines, leafy vines, whatever you want to call them, but you can vary them, lots of different ways to use them. Another thing that we can do is a banner. And these are really fun for like the front of a birthday card, that kind of thing. So we're just going to do an arch, and then we're going to put another one that kind of mirrors it right below it. We're going to close the sides off. Then we're going to come over here, and you're going to start like maybe a third of the way down. And we're going to draw a little tail. Same thing over here. So we have our basic banner, and then we're just going to connect this bottom corner with that line and color it in. And that's what's going to give us kind of the effect that it's folded or it's three-dimensional. So after you've done that, you have your basic shape here. And then you can go back and you can add lines and dots or any kind of little embellishments you like. And then you can put your word inside. One suggestion that I have when you're doing words inside is that you write your word first and then draw your banner, or you pencil your word in, because what happens to me sometimes is I'll be trying to write happy birthday and I'll get like happy birthday and I'll get stuck. For centering purposes, and this is something we can revisit when you're working on your journal as well, a good tip is to start in the center of your word. So I'm going to start with a P for happy, and I'm going to work my way out. So that's another way to make sure that everything fits and gets centered, is if you start with your middle letter and work out to the sides. And that also is a good tip for metal stamping or anything that you're doing where you need something to be centered. So I think I saw a comment where they wanted to see the banner again. So real quick, one more time with the banner: arch, arch, close. We do the tail, we do the tail, close off the bottom, and then you can add embellishments. And there's lots of variations on banners, other things you can do, like you can have them coming in from the side and things like that, which I get into on my website, and we don't have time to do today. But they're also in my books as well, different variations, lots on the banners. So this is basic banner, and we have our leaves, we have our arrows. The last one that I want to show you is what I call my messy flowers. And that's what you saw on this canvas that I had up here. And it's actually on some of my book covers. And the messy flower is just the same way we started the wreath, with those circles where we're kind of tracing over, but not quite. And then we're going to put dots in the center to be sort of that center part of the flower where the bees like to go. And then a few leaf shapes. And rosebuds are easy to do because they're just a spiral. We can all draw a spiral. And you can do as many as you like, wherever you want them. And a few little 3-petal flowers look really nice on there as well. Fun tip: since you have these happy dual brush pens, this is a really fun way to make the 3-petal flower. Watch this. If you press and release, you get that little teardrop shape. Isn't that fun? So you can make your 3-petal flowers with Tombow dual brush pens. Bonus. When do you color the flowers in? So when I draw flowers, typically what I would recommend, because this guy is water-based, So I would actually recommend drawing your flowers with either a permanent marker or a non-water-based marker like the Tombow ABT Pro, which is alcohol-based. Because what happens is if you use these to color them in, it'll all blend and you'll get black in with your pink. So I like to draw with one of the other types of black markers, and then I go back with my Tombow dual brush pens and I color them in. These can also be used for a watercolor effect. If you scribble on something that's non-absorbent, like a plastic baggie, and you pick it up with an aqua pen, you can paint with the marker, which is super cool. And we should do a class on that, right, Michelle? But we don't have time to do that today either. But that is one of my favorite ways to color in, is to use these markers like watercolors as well. So lots of fun things. So that is a few basic embellishments, some things that you can do along with your hand lettering to kind of spice it up a little bit. So at this point, what we want to do is talk about decorating the front of your journal. So you were asked to get a journal that was not black because all of the other colors I think were light enough that you could see the black marker on it. So your journal is going to be your project surface. So to write on this, we are going to use the Tombow Mono Twin marker. This is coming from your advanced or beginner lettering kit. Both of them have this. And it has two ends. One is a really fine tip. The other one is a fine tip. I used the bigger one. The other one will certainly work. Both ends are permanent, but I liked the slightly larger one for this size project, but it's totally up to you. You can use either end or both. But what we want to do is think about what you'd like to put on the front of your journal. So you can do a simple quote like practice makes progress. This is the Tombow Mono Twin pen. And if you don't have that on hand, if you have a Tombow ABT Pro marker that's alcohol-based, that will work on this as well. You can also do a very simple monogram here. I just did a big letter A, put a couple dots and lines, and then I did my vine. I really love this one actually more than this one because I like the way that this looks down the side next to the bookmark. So really easy, really simple. You can do the flowers, you can do a banner, you can do anything you like. Any kind of permanent marker will work on this. Of course, we recommend Tombow because they're the best in the business, but any kind of permanent marker will work. So at this point, it's up to you kind of to figure out what you'd like to do on your journal and go for it. This is going to be faux calligraphy rather than brush script because the Mono Twin is not a brush pen. It is a permanent marker, but it is a bullet tip, a regular tipped marker. So you're going to use the faux calligraphy technique to do your journal if you want that brush script look. So you're going to write your word, find the downstrokes, draw the second line, color it in. That's how I did mine. Same thing over here. It's not the actual brush script because it's not a brush pen. So we're going back to the first thing we learned together today, which is the faux calligraphy. You can throw in your print, you can throw in any embellishments you like. But remember, this is permanent. So take your time, do the best you can. You can practice. In my previous life, I was an English teacher in the public school system for 4 years. And so my inclination is always do a rough draft. And I guess you just can't take that out of the teacher. So I would encourage you to take a piece of paper, maybe even cut it to the size that you're going to be making on the journal and just kind of sketch out with your pencil that came in your kit. You have a pencil and a really good Tombow eraser. You can sketch out what you think you want to do. And then you can actually transfer over to your journal. But a couple of things as we're getting close to the 2 o'clock mark, you guys are welcome to hang out a little bit and ask questions. I'm not going to leave right at 2 o'clock as long as that's okay with Michael's, because I want to be able to answer questions if you have them and help you with your journals. But I would love to see what you did and are doing and how your journals turn out. The saddest thing for me, besides not getting to see you and in another life shake your hand and put my arm around you and get a selfie, is that I can't see your beautiful work. And my favorite thing, absolute favorite thing when I teach a workshop is to see what people create, because my entire mission in life is to inspire creativity in other people, especially people who don't maybe feel so creative. My job is the thing I love most, which is to take what I know how to do and help other people to feel creative. And like, you can actually do this. You can sit down and you can use your hand lettering to make something beautiful. So what I really would love more than anything, if you're going to do one thing after this workshop today, please take a picture of what you make and send it to me. I am on social media. I am at Amy Latta Creations everywhere except Twitter because it was too long, but I don't use Twitter anymore. So Amy Latta Creations on Instagram, on Facebook. I have an Amy Latta and Friends Facebook group you can join and share the picture, or you can email me, amylattacreations@gmail.com. But please, I would love, 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 love to see how your journals turn out. It just makes me so happy. And I know Tombow and Michaels would love to see it too, because we're all about inspiring creativity. We want to see what you make. So at this point, if you have any questions about your project, if you have a quote that you want me to sketch out for you, if there's anything you would like to say or see or any of that, please go ahead and drop it in the chat. Michelle will tell me so I can do it. If you have feedback, comments, I'm here for that. So any questions that you have about my books, about Tombow, about lettering, about life, about any of it, please just go ahead and drop those in the chat. And now's your time. It's your time to work. It's your time to chat with me and ask questions. And I do, before we do that, I want to say a very special hello to Abby Castle. She is, I think, my youngest fan. I think 12. I might be wrong, but 11, maybe. She has a birthday coming up, but I know she was tuning in today. So hello, Abby. Happy birthday. Thank you for joining in. And thank you to all of you who joined in. And I'm just so happy that you were here. And let's take a couple of questions now, Michelle, if you have some.
Yeah, so one I saw that came in that I know you will definitely be able to answer is, which book do you recommend of yours that people get first for beginners or anyone that's maybe interested in lettering?
Okay, that's a great question because there are 5. So basically, it depends on what kind of quotes you want to letter. My first 4 books are all set up in a similar fashion where they're a workbook. And at the beginning of each chapter, and there's like 40 chapters in them, at the beginning of each chapter, there's a quote that I have designed, I've lettered it and embellished it. During the chapter, you'll learn whatever skill you need to do that quote. And then there's a page at the back, a blank page that has a border that I drew. And you're going to recreate that quote or another one if you like, using the skills that you learned. The first book, Hand Lettering for Relaxation, has quotes that are motivational, inspirational, just kind of happy quotes. The third book, Hand Lettering for Laughter, if you follow me on Instagram, it's those kind of quotes. It's the funny, relatable, I'm trying to make you smile and laugh in the midst of a world that's not very funny sometimes. So it's just a difference in the quotes that you're lettering, really. The fourth one, Hand Lettering for Faith, is for the Bible journaling. So if you want to learn this, but you specifically want to letter scripture, that's where you want to start. Their Express Yourself, which is the second book, is the kids book. So if you have kids or are a kid who is 7 to 17, that's going to be the one that you want to start with. And then this newest one, Hand Lettering Off the Page, is designed for people who want to take these skills and letter on things like journals, things like my pillow, things like I lettered on my shoes, which you can't see, but they're right here. So all kinds of, it's 25 different surfaces. And it tells you how to letter on those things like phone cases, wall signs, all kinds of stuff. So if you're interested in taking lettering off of paper and onto other surfaces, then this would be a good one for you. So it kind of depends on your goals. But bottom line, very beginner, if you really don't care and you just want to get started, Hand Lettering for Relaxation.
Oh, someone was asking if you lettered on, I've seen this come up a few times, if you lettered on the pillow, the one that says, "Let's stay home."
I did. Yeah, I actually, I did that in, if you have an iPad Pro, you can get the app Procreate, and it uses the Apple Pencil, which is responsive to pressure like a brush pen. So you can do the very same, that brush technique with an Apple Pencil. So I did that, and then I sent the design to my Cricut and cut it out of heat transfer vinyl.
Awesome. Let's see what else I'm seeing. Someone I saw this come up in the during the middle of the class a little bit. If you have time to go over this pretty quickly, someone was asking again if you could sum up like the angle you hold your pen, your brush pen at when you're doing calligraphy. Yeah.
Okay. So this varies from artist to artist, and I don't think there's a hard and fast right and wrong to this. Let me find my nice smooth paper here. So basically, when I'm lettering, I hold my pen at the same angle the whole time. I just change how much pressure I'm applying. So can you see that my hand isn't really moving? Whereas I know there are some other artists who will kind of make a switch, and I can't even do it, but they'll kind of like move their hand around. I don't. I leave mine at 45 degrees ish to the paper. The same way that I would write my grocery list, I hold my pen the same. It's whatever works for you. So if you find it easier to move your hand, by all means, move your hand. But I personally, just the way that I learned, I've never done that.
Let's see. Oh, and then one more I definitely saw a lot of, because some of these questions I know you already went over in the class, which people can find in the recording, but I did see this
Mhm.
one come up a little bit about how to sort of get the like bounce effect in your letters.
Okay, good question. And I do have tutorials and practice pages on the website for that too. But remember this guy that we talked about, and we talked about moving the X height. Bounce lettering is moving this guy, the baseline. So if you want to get bounce lettering, one simple way to do it is draw yourself a wavy line and write your word on that. And then you can go back, obviously with your brush technique or with your faux calligraphy, but bouncing, not having a firm straight baseline is the answer to that. It's allowing your letters to drift above or below the baseline is another way to think of it. So in lieu of a wavy line, you could also still have a straight baseline, but say, okay, my B is going to go up below it. My E is going to kind of sit on it, and let your letters travel. So it's a matter of, most stylistic things are a matter of playing with one of these three lines: cap height, X height, or baseline, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. I'm seeing a lot of the questions come in that I know you definitely went over during the class. So I sent out the recording to everyone. And by the way, everyone, the class will be available in about 24 to 48 hours on Michael's website and on their YouTube page. It will be on the website for a little bit of time, but it will be on the YouTube page and like permanently forever. So you can always reference this class when you're practicing your lettering. Amy, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Just thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. Thank you for celebrating National Handwriting Day. I've been so excited about this. And if you enjoyed this class, I have another one coming up February 3rd. Oh, and if you give me 2 seconds, I can show you the project. Hold on. Hold, please. And we're back. So this is the project. I'm going to put it right under the overhead cam if you want to switch to that. So this is the project that we'll be making on February 3rd. So this is going to be in time for Valentine's Day. We're going to be still looking at lettering a little bit. You can see we've done kind of a cool overlay down here. We're going to be working with Tombow ABT Pro markers, which are the alcohol-based ones I talked about, because they're permanent, so they can go on our canvas. And we're going to be using some Tombow adhesive to add glitter and just make this super fun little decorative piece. I had such a blast making this. So I'm thinking that you guys will too. But this is going to be on February 3rd. And so you can go the same place that you went to find this class and sign up, you can look for that and you can book so that you can come to that class as well. And then we can play together again and make some more art. So that'll be February 3rd. But thank you so much. And thank you to Michaels and to Tombow for the opportunity to celebrate Handwriting Day today and practice some hand lettering. Again, you can find me at amylattacreations.com. You can access this recording. I also on my YouTube have a beginner hand lettering workshop that you can check out. I've got the books, and you can find me on social media, again, everywhere at Amy Latta Creations. Please tag me. I love getting tagged and seeing things and resharing and all of that. So I would love to be able to talk with you about how you liked the class, any suggestions that you have. And if you liked it, tell Tombow, tell Michael, so we can play some more. But thank you again for being here. I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon, and I hope to see you on February the 3rd. Bye.